The Dreg Heap was unlike anything the Ashen One had ever seen before. It was not a single place but a fusion of many, a graveyard of civilizations where time itself had begun to collapse. Shattered towers from Lothric jutted upward like broken teeth, while fragments of Anor Londo's marble halls lay half buried in ash. The air was thick and suffocating, filled with the choking smell of smoke, and every step crunched against the brittle remains of kingdoms long forgotten. It was as though all of history had been stacked upon itself, pressed together into a single, dying monument. The Ashen One felt the weight of eternity pressing down with each movement, but the voice that had called them here echoed faintly in the mind. The ringed city lay beyond, the final resting place of the dark soul, the secret the gods had tried to bury. But nothing in this heap of ruins wished to remain undisturbed. As the Ashen One pressed forward, fragments of stone and bone gave rise to enemies both old and new. Hollows clung to broken walls like shadows, their shrieks splitting the silence as they leapt forward in desperation. Winged creatures, half-formed angels made of twisted flesh and light, screeched as they descended from the pale sky, their bodies twitching unnaturally as if tied by unseen threads. Even the ground seemed to shift, collapsing beneath the weight of the Ashen One's journey, forcing battles upon crumbling platforms, with nothing but the abyss yawning below. The world itself seemed eager to swallow the last intruder. In the deepest corners of the heap, the Ashen One encountered familiar horrors, warriors clad in armor corroded by ash, monstrous insects crawling through forgotten halls, and even the remnants of demons once thought extinct. Each enemy felt like a reminder of past trials, as though the heap had gathered every despair from the world and thrown it against this lone traveler. Yet for all their fury, the Ashen One's persistence was unyielding, driven by an instinct that there was still something unfinished at the end of this journey. The call of the ringed city was not a choice, it was fate. The descent reached its climax in a cavern of fire and ruin, where two demon lords awaited, their broken forms fused together by sheer will. The last sons of the Chaos Flame, desperate and furious, fought not just to kill but to prove that their kind had not been erased from history. Their fire was dim, flickering like an old torch, yet it burned with hatred and sorrow. The Ashen One clashed with them in a battle that tore the cavern apart, steel against flame, screams against silence. When one fell, the other carried on, their wills intertwining until from their ashes rose something greater, the demon prince, reborn in defiance of death. His body glowed with a fire that should not exist, wings of flame stretching wide as he roared his challenge. The fight was brutal, a storm of fireballs, molten swords, and eruptions that threatened to consume the battlefield itself. Yet even the prince's power was not eternal. The Ashen One's blade struck true, severing the last thread of chaos that bound him to the world. The demon prince's body fell, its embers scattering into the ash of the heap, and with it, an entire legacy of demons was extinguished. The silence that followed was deafening, and in that silence, the path ahead revealed itself. Through the cracks of the cavern, a faint light glimmered, not the warm glow of fire but the cold, pale shimmer of something eternal. The Ashen One moved toward it, climbing out of the heap and into a realm that was untouched by collapse. There, beyond the veil of time and ruin, stood the walls of a city unlike any other. Its gates rose high, carved from stone older than the first flame, guarded by statues that seemed almost alive. The ringed city, hidden at the world's edge, waited in silence. And yet, somewhere within its shadows, another presence lingered. Slave Knight Gael had come before, drawn by the same hunger, searching for the blood of the dark soul. The Ashen One could feel his trail, faint but undeniable, leading deeper into the city. The journey was no longer just about survival, it was about unraveling the truth of mankind itself. The Dreg Heap had been the grave of history, but the ringed city promised something far greater, the secret of the dark soul, and perhaps, the end of the world. The ringed city's walls stretched high into the pale sky, immense and ancient, as if they had been raised not by human hands but by the gods themselves. Their surfaces were etched with strange markings, faded over millennia, and their sheer size dwarfed the Ashen One like a grain of dust against a mountain. Crossing the threshold was like stepping into another world entirely. The Dreg Heap had been ruin and collapse, but the ringed city still stood, frozen in time, untouched by the erosion of ages. And yet, even within its stillness, the air vibrated with menace. Spectral archers patrolled the skies, phantoms conjured from the city's cursed guardians. Their arrows descended in relentless volleys, blotting out the horizon. To take even a step forward meant facing death from above. The Ashen One was forced to move swiftly, darting between broken statues and crumbling walls, the sound of arrows thundering into stone echoing through the city streets. Each shot carried unnatural weight, piercing through stone like paper, forcing the traveler to press ever deeper, toward the heart of the city. The first true defenders appeared soon after, the Ringed Knights. They emerged from the shadows clad in dark, ornate armor, their figures tall and imposing. Their blades, warped and glowing with abyssal fire, carried the weight of humanity's curse. These knights were not hollow, nor were they fully human, they were something forged by the gods to contain the abyss itself. Each swing of their swords was deliberate, slow yet devastating, forcing the Ashen One into measured combat. Their presence carried a terrible dignity, as if they fought not out of rage, but out of endless duty to a promise made long ago. And with every clash of steel, the Ashen One could feel the history bleeding from them, the silent story of guardians who had stood watch over humanity's darkest secret for eternity. The deeper the Ashen One ventured, the clearer the city's dual nature became. It was both a paradise and a prison, its gardens filled with water and light, its architecture breathtaking in its scale, but beneath the beauty lurked decay. Serpents slithered through pools of stagnant water, angels twisted into grotesque forms screamed from above, their bodies a mixture of wings, flesh, and unnatural light. They hovered over the gardens like cruel wardens, raining destruction on any who dared to trespass. The Ashen One fought through them with blade and fire, yet each victory felt like tearing through the fabric of a paradise that had long since turned rotten. The city itself revealed its purpose in fragments. Carvings on temple walls spoke of the pygmy lords, the bearers of the dark soul, hidden here since the dawn of fire. Humanity's origin lay within these walls, not as a gift but as a secret locked away from the world. The gods had promised the ringed city to mankind, but it was no sanctuary, it was a cage, meant to contain humanity's potential, to bury their true power beneath endless stone and silence. Every step forward carried the truth heavier upon the Ashen One's shoulders, as if the city itself whispered of betrayal and suppression. Through flooded streets and chambers where moss and shadow entwined, the Ashen One pressed on. The journey was no longer just survival against monsters but an unraveling of destiny itself. Slave Knight Gael's trail was ever present, his desperation scrawled across the battlefield. The city's guardians had fallen before him, their corpses left as warnings, their strength consumed by his unrelenting hunger. Gael, once humble, had become more beast than man, driven by his quest to seize the blood of the dark soul for his master's painting. He was not far ahead, and the Ashen One could feel the confrontation drawing near. As the gardens gave way to deeper ruins, the city revealed its sorrow in full. The beauty of its design, the flowing water, the wide plazas, the towering spires, was now overshadowed by the grotesque figures that stalked them. Humanity's promised land had become a nightmare, its walls echoing with screams of angels that were never meant to exist, its knights shackled to eternal duty. The truth of the ringed city was plain. This was not salvation, but the gods' final attempt to chain the dark. The Ashen One moved forward regardless, blade in hand, guided not by hope of paradise but by the knowledge that beyond these walls lay the truth. The ringed city was not simply a place to conquer, it was a revelation. At its heart lay the pygmy lords, the very origin of humanity, and beyond them, the one who sought to claim their blood. Every battle, every step, was now a march not just against monsters or guardians, but against the very design of the world itself. The city grew quieter as the Ashen One reached its innermost sanctum. The gardens and flooded streets faded into a vast, domed chamber where time itself seemed to hold its breath. At the center sat a figure, motionless upon a dais, Princess Filianore. She cradled an enormous egg against her body, her face serene, as if trapped in a dreamless sleep. The silence was almost holy, yet it was suffocating. The air was heavy with the strange pull of the egg, a distortion that warped sight and sound, bending the very fabric of reality around it. The Ashen One reached forward, not knowing why, only sensing that this moment mattered, that touching the egg would peel away a veil the gods had long kept hidden. The instant the hand brushed its surface, the world cracked apart. The chamber dissolved into white light, and when it faded, the Ashen One stood not in a city but in a barren wasteland. The sky was hollow, the sun a pale, broken sphere bleeding faint light into the horizon. The land stretched endlessly, empty and lifeless, as if time had finally run out. Scattered across the desert were countless corpses, shriveled and hollow, their armor and weapons rusting into dust. The princess was gone, her illusion shattered, and only the silence of a dead world remained. But amid that silence, a figure stirred. From the horizon came slave Knight Gael, no longer the weary, respectful warrior who had once knelt before the Ashen One. His body was torn and monstrous, his armor shredded, and his face twisted with desperation. He had found the pygmy lords and slaughtered them, devouring their essence until the blood of the dark soul coursed through his veins. His eyes glowed with madness, and his voice was broken by hunger. He no longer sought the blood for the painter alone, he had become its vessel, consumed by its power, driven by a primal instinct to fight until nothing remained. The battle that followed was not just a clash of warriors but a struggle between two final wills at the end of time. Gael fought with wild ferocity, his blade cracking the earth, his movements driven by a strength that bordered on monstrous. Lightning split the sky as he roared, his strikes carrying both desperation and sorrow. The Ashen One answered with steel and fire, refusing to bend under the fury. Each blow was a conversation, Gael's madness against the Ashen One's resolve, his hunger against their purpose. The barren desert became a battlefield of dust and ruin, echoing with the sounds of a war that would never be remembered. As the fight dragged on, Gael's power reached its peak. His blood soaked the ground, staining the sand with the essence of the dark soul, shimmering like fragments of night. Yet with every strike he grew weaker, his body failing under the corruption that had once empowered him. At last, the Ashen One's blade pierced true, and Gael collapsed, gasping like a dying ember. For a moment, the madness faded from his eyes, replaced by a weary acceptance. He had fought as a slave to destiny, and now, at the end of all things, he had been released. His body fell silent, leaving only the wind and the faint shimmer of his blood upon the earth. The Ashen One gathered that blood, the very essence Gael had sought, and carried it back across the fading world. The painter awaited, a child with pale hair and gentle eyes, holding her brush with quiet determination. She had asked for a pigment, something with which to paint a new world. With Gael's blood, she would finally have it, the dark soul itself, a color unlike any other, born from both suffering and hope. She smiled softly as she received it, promising that her painting would not be of fire or darkness but of a place untouched, a home for those lost to the cycles of the world. And so the Ashen One's journey ended not with triumph, but with silence. The ringed city had revealed the last truth, that the gods' lies had shaped the fate of men, that the dark soul had been hidden and feared, and that even at the world's end, struggle remained. Yet in the hands of a painter, a new beginning stirred, a canvas that could carry humanity into a dawn of its own making. The fate of fire, dark, and ash would pass away, but in its place, a painting would endure. Whether it would be filled with light or shadow, only time would tell, but for the first time, mankind would hold the brush.